Well, we're here again tonight for, I don't know if this is the third or the fourth round. I think it's the fourth. But back with us tonight, we've got Miss Jennifer Delk and Calvin Williams and Glenn Sears and Miss Nancy Harris and Jeff McIntosh and Joyce McIntosh and Michael Christian and Michael Schultz speaking. So tonight, we're going to spend some time looking at the pastors over the last 50 years or so. I guess it's closer to 70 years now. We're not going to talk about the last 20 years, but between 1950 and 2000. And so we've got, I count 10 pastors here in those 50 years. And what we'll do is we'll go one at a time, one pastor at a time, and go around. And if you remember or recall anything about that man, we just go through it that way. That way we spend equal time on all of them. And if you don't remember anything about somebody, it doesn't matter a bit. That's all right. It's just whatever you happen to remember. Well, Jennifer, you're not old enough to remember Elmer Morris,
No.
but have you ever heard of him or anything about him?
No.
Okay. Calvin, you would have been a baby when he was a pastor here. And I guess your first 7 years, if you were here at Antioch, he would have been the pastor. Do you remember anything about Elmer Morris?
A little bit. My mom and they were really close to mom and dad, and they come to dad and mom's house a lot. And then he moved off to Tennessee. I can't think of the place right now. It was Tullahoma. And we went up there and visited him up there once or twice, and I was just a little boy. I remember, but that's just about as much as I remember of him.
Was your father in the ministry at that? No, you said he went in the ministry in the 50s.
I can't really remember what year he went in. I was born in 44. I would say it was around 52, long in there, 53. I can look it up in the album if you want to know.
Yeah, I mean, I've been meaning to. We've got his, like I said, we've got his ordination certificate upstairs, so I could tell you almost the exact date. I'm just kind of curious with you saying that they came to your house, what kind of influence your dad was playing there? If he wasn't in the ministry, was he a deacon or what was?
I don't know for sure he was a deacon then. After he retired and come back, him and mom joined the church here, and he was put in as a deacon, wasn't he, Michael?
I think so.
Yeah, I think he was put in as a deacon. He didn't want to pastor anymore because he wasn't able. He was in his 80s.
All right. Glenn, you were not alive for this, but
I was 4 years old.
yeah. Do you remember anything ever said about him or anything at all? All right, that's fine. Miss Nancy, this was a little before your time at Antioch. Do you remember anything ever being said about Elmer Morris?
I know him.
You know him?
He helped the revival at Oak Forest.
Oh, okay.
He was a great pastor. I mean, a great preacher. We had great revival with him.
What was his preaching like? Was he a teaching style or
Old-fashioned.
old-fashioned?
Saving people from going to hell.
Mm.
And he could preach it. I really liked him.
Do you remember what he would wear? Was he in a suit or was he
Couldn't anything yet.
Yeah. I know some of the older timers, they a lot of them would favor a suit for the formality of it, but some of them couldn't afford it. So you'd have a mix there. All right. Jeff?
I was a twinkle in my great-grandmother's eye, I think.
No, I have no idea. No.
Miss Joyce?
No, I don't know him.
Wouldn't have expected much, yeah. Michael, this would be a tale from somebody that might have seen him once.
Yeah, I don't remember even anything being said about him that I remember.
Alrighty, now Melvin Johnson.
No.
That one doesn't mean anything.
Him either.
Okay. We'll get there. Calvin, you might have actually remembered him, Melvin Johnson.
Yeah, I was saved on his ministry. I was was 9 years old.
So you guys called him Joe?
Pardon?
You guys called him Joe, or did he go by Melvin?
No,
Brother Johnson, I think what we mostly called him. I don't know that I actually called him Joe, I just called him Brother Johnson.
Well, being a little kid, I'm sure you didn't, but
Yeah.
yeah. What was his preaching style like?
He was, you didn't have no problem hearing him.
No.
He was a big cut up, he was full of life. I remember he used to take us boys down here swimming in the old baptizing hole. We would go down there, somebody had made a big floating raft, they had barrels in it. And it was floating around out there, and us boys, I'll never forget it long, I was real young, and I didn't know how to swim. And they put me on that barrel, and I was out there floating in that deep water. That hole used to be deep. We jumped out on the top of them trees down there later on. We was boys, 13, 14, and jump in it, and barely could hit the bottom doing that. But anyhow, we floated around out there, and I got scared. And I started to jump off. I remember this, just as plain as day. He said, Calvin said, don't jump off. Don't jump off. I guess he thought I was drowned, but I didn't, so I stayed on there. But they never did have no children. I don't know what they couldn't have, they didn't want one, but I'm sure they would want them. I don't think she could have them, but anyhow, he was one of them, no air conditioning ones, one best I remember. He would sweat Glenn's t-shirts he talking about.
Yeah, you can see it.
Yeah, he didn't have no, you could hear him out there in the cemetery. He was loud. That's what I remember at him.
Was he middle-aged, or was he an older man at that time?
Was you what now? I went to a hearing doctor, and I've only got 25-30% of my hearing.
So was he a middle-aged man, or was he older?
He was, I guess, middle-aged. I'm guessing.
Well, he was in World War II. So, when he was a preacher here?
Preacher here in the early 50s, so I mean, he couldn't have been all that old. What were you thinking, Nancy? You had something.
I'm thinking he's around in his 30s.
Okay,
Yeah.
that would be about right.
Oh,
If he was in the war.
yeah, I think around in his 30s. Yeah.
Did you have anything that stuck out to you, Glenn?
No, not really. The thing I remember more about anything was Calvin, old 52 Nash he had, and he had an A model. Remember the A model? He had an A model, and he drive an A model. I thought that was the coolest thing around.
Mm-hmm.
Preacher driving an A model, and they lived for that block house. Up there, go past Marcy's.
Mm-hmm.
Parsons, they had.
That was the Parsons.
Yeah.
That block, you know, when you go past Marcy's, you go up the hill, and just right on the right there, you know where them mail vehicles are?
Yeah.
That was Parsons. There was a concrete block house, and that's where they stayed, where they lived. And I don't know if the church built the. Do you know if the church built that, or if it was, they bought it? But that's where that was Parsons.
Where the woman got the vehicle set there and nobody there.
Well, Nancy, seemed like you remember a bit about him. What comes to your mind when you think about him?
I really liked Brother Johnson and Maybelle, and I worked with them through revivals. And they were at our church a lot, and he fooled with us kids just like he was one of us. And he had his hands full. And he was a good preacher. He was loud. That probably had to get his attention.
Okay.
He was kind of a big guy too.
Yes, he was a big guy.
I remember that.
You mean he was heavy set or tall or?
He was tall and wide.
Yeah.
Jeff,
Twinkle in my grandmother's eye, getting closer.
getting closer. Miss Joyce, anything
I
there?
don't know.
All right. Michael,
No, I don't know anything.
is there any reason that you remember that he was here for so briefly? Because he's only here for about a year and a half. Was that
Yeah, that's when
Yeah.
the trouble started.
that's when everything was going on with the,
That's when they had to
okay,
started, see, he left in 53, and I know the trouble was going on in 54. Really, I don't know when it started, I was just a kid, but I do remember that it was in the middle 50s when we had that.
okay.
So he was here then.
So he was kind of the shot over the bow that everything is really starting to get rocky.
I don't know enough to talk about it, but just hearsay. But what I said last week is just what I've been told.
Yeah.
But I mean, I wasn't but 6 years old, so Mom and Daddy, they didn't talk about too much. So.
Yeah.
But I know it was a real bad time at Antioch. I do remember that.
All righty, Ronald Burnett. Nothing from Jennifer yet. We'll get there. First of all, Calvin, Ronald Burnett, did he go by Ronald or Ron or Ronnie?
Most of the people called him Brother Burnett.
All
They
right.
didn't, most of them didn't mention their first name.
Really?
I don't know why, but they just did. Did they, most people call you by Brother Michael or?
Yeah,
or
yeah, Brother Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where it started with Scott Hughes. We
Okay.
called him Brother Scott, but other than that, we usually by the last name.
Hmm.
He had a daughter named Helen.
Yeah.
I can't think of that boy's name. What was his name? You remember Miss Nancy?
No, I can't think of it. He's a cute little boy.
Well, and I can't remember his wife.
I can't
No.
either. I should.
But he was a heavy-set guy, built pretty good. He was another loud one. Yeah.
Was he the long-winded one?
The one,
The long-winded, we had one, he preached for about an hour and a half.
yeah, he preached a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't Brother Chestnut also preach a long time?
Yeah, but
I
sure.
was thinking,
You know, he listens to what we sound about all these preachers. He's gonna make a perfect preacher, ain't he? He's gonna just
Taking notes.
He's gonna quit at the right time, and he's gonna speak not too loud, ain't he?
No kidding, no kidding. I mean, at 12 o'clock, he just getting started.
Now, Glenn, you've said this off the record, but I'm going to ask you on the record. When you say that he had a daughter that you seem like you remember her, was she one of these pretty girls that you were interested in at the church? Yeah.
I don't know, I don't remember.
Okay.
You don't remember
I
that?
remember Helen, but I don't remember what she looked like.
Yeah.
She must have been older than me or something. I didn't get much attention, Calvin. Especially from pretty girls. Wait, I got something.
Go ahead, yeah.
Was he the first one to live in the parsonage, in the new parsonage?
Brother Burnett,
Mhm.
he lived in the parsonage too.
I think he was the first one that lived in the.
Now, is that the new
The
parsonage
old
you're talking?
parsonage.
The old.
Dog.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he lived in the old one.
Yeah.
So that's the one on the left up here on Duncan Ridge
I
coming from
guess
the
that was,
church.
when they built the new one down here,
58.
58?
Yeah.
Yeah, we look at the time.
Yes, that'd be Chestnut.
No check.
Yeah, the parsonage, and one you're living in, wasn't even built.
Right. Yeah, so he would have been in the old one on the left where,
Right, I forgot about that one, yeah.
so yeah, so at some point between Morris and Burnett, they moved from living out on Spa Road to living here on Duncan Ridge, but still hadn't got into the parsonage we have now. Okay.
Well, that one, the second Parsons, it was concrete block building, and it's concrete block also.
Mm.
But on the right,
Okay.
it's concrete block.
Miss Nancy, anything that you remember particular about Ronald Burnett?
Yeah, he helped revivals down at Old Forest too. But, as far as getting close to them, the family, we never did. He weren't like the other two, they were everybody's friend. He was quieter. He could preach though, he could preach loud. He had cute kids. His wife was always with him and the kids. That's about all I know about him.
His wife's name, you've said it at least once.
Still can't think of it.
Okay, I thought somebody had said it. And he said his daughter's was Helen,
It may
but
be on the back of some pictures that Marshall's mother has. I'll look and see. It's on there.
Jeff,
We're getting there.
we're getting closer every time. Miss Joyce,
Which one are you talking about?
we're still on Ronald Burnett.
No, I don't know.
Okay. Michael, were you born yet?
No.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Foster Chestnut. Now you have come to be alive in this tenure, right, Jennifer? Are you in
Not
there?
quite.
Still not there. Okay. All right. So you
He's
were
Getting
you-
close. Overnight. Janice and Aiden were around during his tenure, and apparently my grandparents had him and his family over for Sunday lunches at times, and all the kids got in trouble. So that's all I know about him.
Now you said before we started recording, mentioned somebody, and I've heard this name. Your family use it before. Fat.
His name was Sinclair Delk, but everybody called him Fat because he was big. Of course, he was Paul Fat to me, and Granny was Juanita. And they lived down there right beside Mom and Dad.
Now, when you say down there next to Mom and Dad, you mean the current home?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I know you've told me you had some family here before.
Well, Daddy was raised up on the ridge, as he says. Yeah. His mother was a Johnson, and
Because you've told me a story before about going to their house and they used to have a bucket of lard that they cooked with or something.
yeah, that was the thing back then. You had a big bucket of lard, and you just scooped out what you wanted.
All right. Calvin, Foster Chestnut.
He wasn't he was just about the same speed in his voice. The best I remember, he didn't get real loud or real low. He was just kind of just a smooth, but he never. Best I remember of him, he never left the pulpit hardly at all while he was preaching. He stayed behind the desk up there.
Was that new? These other fellows that were louder, were they more mobile?
Yeah, some of them got out of it, some of them didn't. You talking about the pulpit?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, not pew hopping or anything, but I mean, they'd come down.
No, not real loud.
Yeah. Okay.
I was just a boy when Mom and Daddy brought us here, and he called me old fisherman. He knew I liked to fish, and he shook my hand and said, old fisherman. He had one boy named Alexander, but I see him every once in a while in Russellville. He still living.
He used to work at Young's.
They work for the funeral home.
Yeah, he works at that funeral home, you're right.
Glenn, what do you remember about Foster Chestnut?
And when did he leave?
64. So this would have been most of your teen years.
You were still here.
I don't know, but I don't know too much about him.
That sounds like a teenager. Not paying any attention. We've got some of those.
I didn't, tell you the truth, I went to church, I was in the body.
You were here in body.
I was in the body, but I wasn't here in the spirit. And I didn't really get into the spirit until about 1977. So all these right here, I mean, I was just here,
Okay.
girl watching.
Now, did you make, I know you said, you've told me before, you became a Christian later on. But
Well,
did you make a
yeah,
profession of faith and get baptized here?
This is what happened. This is something that I've heard you talk about before. Okay, when I was in Bible school, I was about 6, 7 years old, something like that. We had, I don't know, one of these preachers, he was a hellfire brimstone. And here you got a whole bunch of little kids, you know, and everybody wanted hell. So they give an invitation on, and just about everybody went to the altar, and I was sitting there, I wasn't going up until me and my cousin were sitting there, and I said, I'll go if you go. So that was, as far as my salvation experience, that was my salvation, that I got baptized. But then in 77 is when the Lord got hold of me, shook me, turned me upside down, and spanked me real good. And I never forgot. Then, and I didn't get baptized. See, I thought if you're baptized, that was it. But I had the cart before horse. I heard you preached a sermon about it, maybe 2 months ago. You know, getting the cart before the horse, you get baptized, and then you get saved. Well, that was me. I got saved, but I wasn't baptized. And there for about 2 years after I became a Christian, I really struggled. Because, you know, I knew there was something wrong. There was something just wasn't exactly right. And one Saturday night, I was at work. And you know Freddie Ashby. Well, Freddie Ashby, his daddy was a preacher. And I said, Freddie, I want to talk to you. And I said, I know I'm a Christian. I know I've been saved. I know that. But I said, and I was baptized when I was about 5 years old. He said, well, you need to be baptized again. I said, what? I said, yeah. So I went to see Brother Joe, and that was the best feeling I was probably one of the best feelings I ever had. But I was finally doing what God wanted me to do. I was finally in His will. But man, he stopped me.
Well, you must have been pretty early on for the Joe Carrico train because he baptized just about everybody in Logan County.
Brother Joe baptized me.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Is you were must have been pretty early on for his really rise to the prominence he was in.
I think it was 77. I think when I was baptized. So I didn't come back from Vietnam and everything.
Right. I know at least 4 pastors in Russellville alone that were all baptized by Joe Carrico. Whether they went to his church or not. Somehow he ended up baptizing.
He told me that he had more weddings and more funerals. And he told me how many, it was like 1,000. But he said he'd lots rather preach a funeral than a wedding.
Yeah, I get that. The results of the funeral are final.
Yeah. Yeah.
Weddings, kind of up in there.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry, I've got us off topic here. Foster Chestnut, you didn't have anything to add in there. All right, Miss Nancy.
Well, what Calvin said about them is pretty well the truth. I mean, that's the way they were. And they also was a couple that liked to be with other couples at church and fish or anything to just be together. They were very sociable. And I really liked them. I know Miss Chestnut, she got in there and just worked like he did for the church.
Now there was something Calvin said that made you giggle. It might have been about him not coming out of the pulpit or something like that. There was something that...
No, he didn't run all over the church. No, he didn't.
Okay.
He stood behind it.
Okay. Jeff.
Well, my mother was dreaming about me.
You had entered into the world's plan at this point.
In the plan of somebody's head.
Miss Joyce?
I didn't know them, but my mother-in-law, she talked highly of them. She really liked both of them. That's all I know.
Now, your mother-in-law, who was that?
Annie McIntosh.
Annie McIntosh.
Yeah.
Okay. Mike?
Yes. I don't remember him, and I don't remember why that I don't remember him, because I would have been, well, by the time he left, I would have been about 5 years old. And I would have thought I would have had some memory, you know, of something, but I cannot remember anything about him. I remember, and it was later on, there was talk, you know, about different things he'd done while he was here. And I remember him saying he was a shorter man. And I remember him saying he preached that you shouldn't have a TV. And that's all.
I remember that.
That's all I remember about it.
And you couldn't have no cards.
But I don't remember that.
Daddy wouldn't even let us have old maids.
Oh, cards.
Oh, cards.
Like playing cards.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you said cars. I was thinking,
Always going back to the Amish days.
yeah, so he said no cars.
Yeah.
Okay, no cards.
Cards.
For the three of yuns, did he push to move the parsonage, or was that something that just came up naturally? Do you remember at all how the parsonage got moved from one place to another? Any knowledge of that at all?
I just remember this house up here is the one I remember.
He must have been the first one to live in it, because it was built in '58.
Did they buy that house from Elaine and Wilford?
I can't remember whether they did or not.
I know that they were living there when we married.
But the only thing I remember is Miss Hattie, Mr. Dennis living in it, and Wilford and Elaine. You talking about the old house, Elaine's old house, or the parsonage?
I'm talking about the parsonage.
Oh, parsonage.
When we married, they.
I really don't know who.
I didn't know who built it or anything about it.
Let's see, after they built the church, I remember Donnie Ballard and living in that old parsonage.
Can't think of her name.
Vera.
Yeah, and they must have sold it long in there
Something.
somewhere.
I forgot about them.
Well, they might have sold it after they built the new one down here.
Now Wilford and Elaine moved in with Miss Candy and Mr. Blake there, somewhere along in there too. They had to go and move in with them.
Yeah.
And that's when they sold it.
I just remember them in the old house up here.
Is that the one James Earl lived in? The
Uh-huh.
old hou- Okay.
Where the horses, down at the back.
Yeah.
So he comes along, Foster does, after all this split and fallout we talked about the last time. And he stays for 8 years. I mean, that's a pretty good tenure. Was he a leveling force, or was it just that the people that were problematic were now gone? Would you say he did a good job of bringing the church together, or was it just that the people who separated everybody was gone? Go ahead, Nancy.
I would say you probably both of them.
I know when I started coming out here, you couldn't hardly get a seat to sit down.
And I remember on Sunday night, it better be on Sunday night, it was on Sunday morning.
Yeah, big crowds on Sunday night. Had what? Training union and then preaching, didn't we?
Yeah, but then there wasn't much, there wasn't a whole lot of entertainment. I mean, kids, they come to church, but meet other kids.
They had classes too.
Yeah. But I remember there being better than on Sunday night, was on Sunday night.
It was.
Hugh Clardy, he's another one. He was here just over a year. Miss Jennifer, any memory of Hugh Clardy at all?
I just know he's Brother Albert's brother.
Right.
And I think Mom and Daddy liked him, but I'm still not quite here yet.
Like Jeff, you have entered into thought. No.
Mom was carrying me around at the time.
Calvin,
Yeah.
Hugh Clardy.
Hugh Clardy, I remember very little about him, because that was I was trying to figure up here. I was born in 44, I was 21 years old. I was dating my wife. I'd go to her churches probably more than I did here. But we would come occasionally here, we wasn't full-time, I wasn't full-time. I just remember hearing him preach some, and his brother Albert's brother.
Mhm.
Right. Do you remember anything about him outside of the church? Did you know him personally?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. Glenn, do you remember anything about him?
What's the year? I can't-
65 and 6.
No, I was a senior in high school, and I didn't go to church. I mean, I went to church, but I wasn't really in the church.
Right.
You know, I was just like a sick one. And so but now, like I say, when the Lord got hold of him, he shook the fire out of him.
Yeah.
We was down at an age group, me and him pretty close together, that when we turned 16, we knowed everything, we owned
We
everything.
didn't go,
And we done everything we wanted to.
and I hated church.
Oh my gosh.
I did. I mean, when I was a kid, you know, everybody else out playing and swimming, riding horses and stuff. You know. I remember one time, I said I hated church. I didn't hate church, but I just didn't like it. My first cousin come by one Sunday morning, he wanted to go fishing. And I wanted to go fishing. Daddy wouldn't let me go fishing. Oh, maybe he's mad. Well, come on to church. We'll come home that afternoon. And he come home with a string of fish this long.
Temptation, wasn't it?
Oh,
I've heard y'all telling tales about even when you were teenagers and maybe a little after, even when you'd get out of church, y'all would tear out of here in your cars and go to Sharon Grove.
Yeah.
I've heard you both talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sharon Grove was the place.
Dickens.
We wasn't no angels, I tell you, we weren't no angels.
Well, now, I don't remember who's told me this, but I've been told, Calvin, that you and Carolyn, when you were dating, you was kind of on again, off again for a while, and that sometimes you'd get all mad and go to her driveway and do donuts in her driveway.
He pleads the fifth.
I wonder who told you that.
Not naming any names of my sources, but
Oh, well, I do. I've done a lot of things. I tell you. I'd get under the rug and hide, but I remember I got mad at her one time, and I went down. Of course, that road where she lived on was gravel, and I had an old '57 Chevrolet, and it had what they call cutoffs on it. You screw these cutoffs back up, and it just sounded like a racetrack. I mean, it was loud, like any mufflers on it. And I went down the Asbury Valley. That's a little valley. That's what they call it, the Asbury Valley. I went down there one night. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I went down the road real easy. When I got up there at the top of the hill, I turned around and I laid that old car plumb to the floor. I thought it dropped. I bet I was running 75. There's a curve right there. There's a pond right there. And there's a curve right there. And I went around. And then that curved sideways, and I almost went in the ditch on the other side. Everything got real quiet. My mother-in-law told me this. She said, "We knowed it was you. You woke us up 1 o'clock in the morning and said everything got real quiet. and said, I poked Melvin, said, Melvin, reckon we're gonna sit down, reckon he run that pond up there? Said, I can't hear him. But anyhow, we all laughed about it, my mother-in-law laughed about it. But anyhow, we was, God forgive us, but we done a lot of things, boys.
Oh, we're a bit busy during these years.
Oh, we did,
All right. Miss Nancy, this would have been, you were already a member here, you joined.
Yeah, I had kids. I had a bunch of brats, but I had 3. Yes, I remember them real well. They had a little girl, and she didn't have any, what do you call it, cleft.
Oh, she had cleft lip.
And at the time, I was the March of Dimes lady at Lewisburg that bugged you to give money. And so I got a hold of who's over me and told them about her, and we got her mouth done free through the March of Dimes.
Well,
And they left sometime after that, so I don't know. Well, I have seen Sylvia at Clarksville. I think it's Clarksville, that's where she's at.
I don't know.
But I reckon they're fine. You know, they did separate.
Oh.
I think they, they divorced.
Hmm.
He remarried, and she had the last time I saw her.
Jeff.
Well, I'm sure somebody was playing house thinking about me about that time. I ain't got here yet.
How far we gotta go?
Getting there.
We're starting to see
Me
you.
and Jennifer hanging out Thursday.
Y'all are going to have plenty to fill in at some point, we know. Miss Joyce?
I didn't know him.
Okay. Michael, Hugh Clardy.
I remember, it's almost the opposite of Brother Chestnut. I remember they had done something to the pulpit because he was so tall. They added to it or something, set on top of it because he was tall, where his Bible was set up higher. I remember that about him, and of course I was pretty little when he was here, but I do remember they were doing something, and I was talking to him, and I asked him, I said, well, how old you gotta be to take the Lord's Supper? I remember asking him that, and he had the strangest look on his face, and then he started, telling me, but I remember that.
What kind of a preacher was he? I guess that might be a Nancy question or maybe a you question. Was he one of these shouting preachers, or was he
I
more?
don't think he did he?
I can't remember that much about him during his preaching,
I
but
think he pretty well stood behind the pulpit and preached.
I remember he had a 54 Chevrolet.
remember the cars.
Yeah. I don't remember a thing about any of these fellas, but the parking lot was great back then. Alrighty, Homer Lasker.
When I had been born then. But he left when I was like 6, so I don't remember a lot about him. I just remember he was a short little guy. And I think he was sort of balding. And so he always looked old to me. You're 6 and you see a bald guy, they're ancient. And but I remember him at Bible school and stuff. I mean, he seemed to be a nice guy. And I thought he was sort of a quiet kind of guy. But I don't have a lot of memories of him.
Calvin, Homer Laster.
Homer Laster, that was a period, I married in '69. I went to her church a lot during that period there. But I did come here some too. Me and her both did. He was a farmer. He liked to bird hunt. He was a good preacher. Church liked him, I think. He was a kind of easygoing preacher. He wasn't one of them loud ones. He was just sort of. He was a good preacher. But that's what I remember him. about all I remember much about him, but I know him and my daddy, I remember him telling me about it. Him and my daddy went to Georgia bird hunting. And, he told me a lot of bird stories, so he was a big bird hunter. But a good preacher. About what I remember him.
Well, he came about the time I went in the army. So I don't think I ever really preached. But he married me and my wife.
Oh.
So, and it was strange. He had had a funeral about an hour before he married us. And so we got to use the flowers from the funeral.
That's recycling back then.
I hope he didn't get his vows mixed up.
No, but, yeah, and that was in 1970, so.
And that was here at the church, here at Antioch?
Yeah.
I'd like to look up whose funeral it was. Because I don't know, I mean, we can find that out.
I remember real well. My suit, I had a polyester green suit, that's what I got married in. You know, it used to be polyester was the thing, you don't remember polyester.
Everything was
Everything was polyester, they had polyester everywhere. And it was hot,
Yeah.
but
Stick
you
to
didn't,
you.
but you didn't have to iron them. But I remember I had a polyester suit when I got married. In fact, that's what my wife reminds me of everything. That's what the picture.
I don't blame her.
Well, that's all you had. That's all you had.
So you got it. Miss Nancy, what do you remember about home?
Well, I'm like Calvin, that's what I thought of him also, and they were a good couple. They was really good for the church, they had good children, they raised them right. And they did things also with us, besides just Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. They was always, and in fact, when we bought our carpet for our house, well, he went with us to Georgia to get it, took us where to get it. So we was with them a whole lot.
Now, he was, at least from my understanding, what I've been told, he was the pastor when they added the Sunday school wings on. Was he naturally sort of an administrative kind of person, or was he just the guy who was here when the church decided to do that? Did he lead that front, or?
I have no idea who started the Sunday school rooms, but I thank the Lord for them, because we sure did need them. Before we had Sunday school rooms, at one time, they used sheets up there.
Right.
And just draw strings. I mean, they had strings and pulling backwards and forth. In fact, that's what the trouble started over, was in
Right.
Sunday school rooms. But I think they were just really nice people, and they really took good care of that parsonage. They treated it like it was their own.
Jeff, have you been born yet?
Right old age, 11 months when he leaves.
Okay.
Don't know much about him. I'm sure I've interrupted a lot of sermons, but
Well, Miss Joyce, I guess that means that you were here during his years.
Yeah.
What do you remember about him?
When I was dating Milton, we went to church on Sunday night, and I really liked him. He was real nice, and Betty was too, and you'd see her in the store anywhere, she'll speak to you and start a conversation, and they're really nice people. That's about all I can say about it.
Michael?
I remember, quite a bit about him. I don't remember exactly what was wrong. He had something wrong with his hip or his leg or something. He kind of walked with a limp. But he would get out, like we was having Bible school or anything, he was out there with the boys and girls and playing, and he was involved, and and we get out there and play baseball, and you wouldn't notice it a lot, but I mean, he limped, and of course, just like some of the others said, we have a lot of people coming then. I know he was involved, and he was kind of more of a teaching preacher, what I remember about
Yeah, that's
him.
about right.
And I think that got more people interested. And as far as the Sunday school rooms, I don't remember if he, was kind of pushed towards that or not, but he was always, looking for ways to improve the church, I think, just the way it seemed to me. I was pretty young, but, we was crowded. I know the Sunday school rooms down here was, really crowded. And I think that pushed that to, get something going and built that. But, that's what I remember about him. It seemed like he was, he was really involved with all ages. I was younger, so I remember like playing ball and stuff with us. He was involved with the younger people. But I know he was involved with some of the others because, of his teaching and everything.
I remember my dad thought a lot of it. And when Mama died, in Daddy's Bible, he'd have Brother Laster, the sermon, he'd have something on Brother Laster, 19, and all through the Bible, every time,
Now, I haven't asked this, I guess I should. This is going to be really hard to remember. Would these fellas, any one of them or all of them, would they kind of just take a sermon one at a time, or did they walk through the Bible the way that we're doing
I
now?
don't remember.
Anybody wouldn't?
Well, they preached different sermons, and they was all for Jesus, and they tried to save everybody, and they visited homes, went out and got the lost and brought them in, little children. They were busy.
I think Brother Laster might have done some of the stuff more might have been on Wednesday night or Sunday nights. It was more of it'd take like a study, a Bible study, like through a book or, but other than that, it was more just whatever the sermon was.
I guess that's where Daddy got all his stuff, but he'd have wrote in the Bible, Brother Laster.
Ray Mullen, he had a pretty substantial tenure here. What do you remember about him, Miss Jennifer?
I do remember him. He's one that baptized me after a revival with Brother Joe.
Oh, whoa, Joe let somebody else baptize.
But I remember he had 2 daughters, and of course they were older than me, but they were still kids at the time, and they were really big in the Bible school, and he was a lot of other couples like Jimmy Judy White were about their age, and I know they done a lot with the couples there. His preaching, he was more like a teacher, I think. And sometimes, he could, I guess something was on his heart or whatever, he could pound the pulpit a little bit. But, most of the time he was pretty mild-mannered, I thought. And I don't know if it was because he was here for a good length of time. Maybe his preaching got a little stale, or I don't know what, but I know there was a big stink and he was asked to leave, and that sort of made a split in the church. Most of the time when a preacher leaves, especially under a circumstance like that, you're going to have people fall out. So a lot of those couples that did, do things with them outside of church left too.
Now, this is, we talked about this maybe a little last week, if it's the same one. The guy that's just during the service just said, we're gonna have a vote right now.
Yeah, that was
That's-
it.
Okay. So,
Nobody's seen it coming, to my knowledge.
Calvin, Ray Mullen.
I remember him pretty well. We man, her, she joined the church while he was here. She moved from a General Baptist to a missionary. Kimberly was born, Kimberly was saved, and I'm pretty sure she was baptized under his ministry. Fun guy. He's good to be with. I hunted with him some, dove hunting. He come to visit me last morning. Him and his wife she was a good teacher. I remember her teacher, you had a class right here.
Yeah.
She was a good teacher. They had 2 daughters. He was a picky-fied fella. Me and him and Harvey Stanton, you never did meet Harvey Stanton, did you?
No.
We hunted a lot together, and I'll never forget as long as I live. He was real, he liked to pick at people.
Oh,
And,
okay.
that was right down my alley too, but anyhow, we was going to Allensville dove hunting. I remember this about him. He called me over before we got in Harvey's truck, and he says, Harvey just brought a brand new Esca shotgun. And I told him that the barrel was crooked on it. And he says, he just laughed at me. He thought I was pulling his leg. And he says, all it will take for you to see it. I said, I'll fix him up. So we got over yonder to Allensville, got out there, Harvey said, Kevin said, look at my Esca right here. Said, look at it, throwed it down there. It was a pretty gun. I said, that's a good looking gun, Harvey. I said, I throwed it up my shoulder 2 or 3 times. I said, boy, that gun feels good. I said, you can see down the barrel real good. And I said, oh, whoa. Harvey said, what is it? What is it? I said, Harvey, you better get another gun. I said, you won't kill no dove with this gun. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, just about that fourth man, the barrel down there, it's got a bow in it. He slapped me real hard on the back. He said, Preacher Mullins tried to tell me that, and I didn't believe him. So, well, yeah, Harvey all worked up, But he was good to be around, picky and full of jokes and stuff like that. He liked that. But he was really close to Harvey. Harvey was a deacon here then.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a lot of good times, me and Ray and Beverly. They was good. We just talked about it a while ago. He sort of made a mess, a mistake of himself. I think some of the deacons had went. I think they went and talked to him. I can't remember. I believe
I don't know.
they wanted to resign. People wanted to resign, and it sort of got in his skin. So he got up from church that Sunday, surprised everybody. It surprised me. Anybody wanted him to leave, just stand up. I guess he didn't think nobody'd stand up, but enough of them did. That was kind of a sad thing in the church. That hurt him just as much as it did the church. But anyhow, I remember we had a good time together. For a long period of time, he was a pastor. He was, he pastored
You had it
for
from
years, wasn't he?
February of 73 to March of 82.
Yeah.
Right over 9 years.
Yeah. He was a well-liked person. I would see him occasionally years later before he died. He was always friendly and good to be around, and just like everybody else, he made mistakes. But I think the church was doing pretty good. From 73 on up to the 82, I guess. But, about along when he done that, I guess, when it got 82.
So I wasn't here, I was.
I think it was, I think it's on there.
Yeah, it must
That
have been.
end,
I bet you it was March 28th. That was the day he was out.
Looks like it. Yeah.
Yeah, because he never came back after that, did he?
Oh. Well, okay, so for those of you that were here for that, before we move on with Ray, how did the church process that? I mean, what do you even do? Did you have deacons that just kind of took up and helped to get the church moving forward?
Best I remember, that's what happened. The deacons started looking for another pastor.
Now, you guys weren't deacons yet.
No.
Who was deacons back then?
Lloyd White, Monday,
Daddy.
Wilmer Sears,
Your
Cricket
father,
White.
Leslie Williams was about being one too. And I'd say your
Harper
your
Jr. was,
Clarence Jr., Clarence, was he one?
Clarence,
Was Clarence one?
Yeah,
Clarence
Cricket
White,
Cricket White, yeah, he
Oh,
was.
He a deacon?
Clarence,
William
Was he? I thought he was.
was Uncle
Roy
Leslie.
Harris. Now Roy, he was older one day.
Yeah, he was over.
Yeah. Let's see, who else was it?
Was it
I'm
Uncle
not sure if
Leslie?
Jimmy was or not.
Daddy,
Yeah.
he was after he retired the ministry, he come as a deacon here. I don't think he was a deacon before he went into the ministry. I don't think
He
he
was
was.
preaching somewhere then.
Was Jimmy White ordained with you guys, or was he a deacon before?
With us,
Okay, so he would have been a little after.
yeah.
And your father, Michael, was he
Yeah.
ordained with you all, or a little before?
No, he never was.
He wasn't. Okay.
I thought he was a deacon.
No, he was a trustee.
Okay.
All right. Glenn, Ray Mullen, do you have any?
Well, I never heard Brother Mullen preach for one sermon, and I can tell you what the sermon was. It was about walking on plowed ground and looking behind. In other words, you keep going, you don't look at the past, and there's only sermon I ever heard preach, but I remember it. But at that time, I was in Posto.
Okay.
But he filled in with Brother Joe one night, and said, it's something about walking, plowing, and don't look behind, or
Yeah.
plowing foul ground, and don't look.
Yeah, there's a parable, just exactly what you just said. Yeah. Once you set your hand to the plow, don't look behind you.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Miss Nancy, what about Ray Mullen?
Well, I liked him, I liked his whole family. He was a good preacher. He got around with everybody at church. And I liked it when they went somewhere, I got to keep their girls. And I never had no problems with him. They were real friendly. Do anything for you, you ask them.
I have you bring up a thought there. Were these fellas what we call bivocational? Did they have jobs, or were they full-time pastors?
Full-time pastor.
These are all okay. All right, Jeff.
I can remember two things. One time it was either a Sunday night or a Wednesday night. I swear I was a little kid in a pew sitting looking through the psalm book because I was bored as I don't know what. And I swear, I think he said out loud, "Son, put the book up." He was preaching. I swear, I think that's what he said. Either he said it or God got me in my head thinking he said it, so I
He
put
said
the
it,
book
or
up.
God said it.
But other than that, I don't remember anything else other than March 28, 1982. That was interesting days.
No.
Because that had never happened, of course, and I was like, what in the world's going on? But I don't remember anything else.
Miss Joyce.
I remember him, when Milton's sister got killed in a car wreck, that he took Annie and him down to Nashville to see her, or he would take us, anything we needed about going down there. we didn't have a way to go or anything. Most of the time, I don't drive in Nashville unless somebody's with me that knows where they're going, because I get lost. So, I remember that, and then I remember Jeff and I rode with them down to Coon Range Lake when we was having fish fries. And Jeff was little, and he was having a hard time with his words at that time. So he would laugh at him when he said bird, and he would laugh at him about it. He didn't mean anything by it, but Jeff had to go to therapy, and he done better after he went to therapy. But we rode down there, we had a good time, and enjoyed it.
Michael?
I was trying to think of the different things that happened. I do remember I was not there the Sunday that he done that. I don't remember why or what, I was married, but I don't know what we had going on, but I was not there that Sunday morning when he was leaving. Of course, his girls was about my age, and I remember them growing up with them. And one thing I remember about him, he was pretty easy to get distracted or flustered when he was preaching. And we was having the Wednesday nights, I think it was, down here in the basement, over there where the old fellowship hall was. And we was in that, and some wasps got flying around, and it just tore him up, and he just had to dismiss because they was flying around, and it just got him so tore up that he couldn't finish.
He may have been allergic to them.
I don't know, he might have been, but it was something. I mean, I remember, because that's
This
kind
kind of
of.
validates my story on getting frustrated. I guess my page is turning.
I was gonna say that probably threw him all off.
Well, there was one time, it might have been Martha Hopper. One of her children was real little and they were squalling. They were screaming bloody murder. And he stopped the service and he said, I'm going to give you a few minutes to take them out and take care of that situation before I continue. And I don't think that went over real well.
Well, no.
I have a feeling this is the time I got taken out too during this time, Brother Millen preaching, because like I said, Mom and my grandmother said that was too much.
That was when you're talking about was the daughter, was one of the daughters, and she lives in Sharon Grove now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, the one that has
apologized to
the
him.
bar,
Yeah,
bar,
yeah, but it,
that boy that used to come, Brandon.
I was getting tired of hearing them squall too.
but I
Elizabeth,
just
that's
remember
her
that
name.
about him.
Elizabeth.
He'd get kind of,
Oh, you couldn't hear him.
he'd get frustrated or whatever. He got bothered.
Who told you about that service with you not being here? Who's the one that told you?
I don't even remember. I just, like I said, I can't.
news.
I can't remember. I can't imagine where we was at.
I imagine the party lines on the
Yeah.
phones back there
Yeah.
were buzzing. So people got home.
Everybody heard about that.
There weren't no cell phones, so the party
Well,
lines.
I mean, I think, if you happen to not be here that Sunday, I'm like, what? Like,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
did
I was-
what?
I was not here. I do remember that. Like I said, I hadn't been married a long time, but I can't remember what we was doing. But we wasn't here.
Providential. Just another thought occurring in my head. I haven't asked this. Did many of these folks take notes into the pulpit? Or was that something that you didn't remember them doing very much?
No, I remember that.
I don't either.
I'm sure they did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen them do it.
Yeah.
Ray did, I remember, because I remember him saying something about delayed one of the preaching services because he had laid him down in a chair, and I think somebody moved him or something. and so we was having to wait on him finding them notes.
Well, growing up in the ministry, that's actually a big distinction with some ministers. My pastor, when I was apprenticing, he told me that you do not take notes into the pulpit. And he would quote this, he would say, Jesus said that the Spirit will give him what you need to say in the hour. That's what Jesus said. I will tell you what you need to say in the hour. So take no thought for what you shall say. And so from real young, I was taught that you don't take notes in the pulpit. And so I've had certain churches over the years that have had a problem with that. I didn't know if that was ever something here at Antioch where... Okay. Tom Moody, Miss Jennifer.
Well, he was probably the closest one to my family of any of the others. Of course, I was in high school at the time, but apparently when he was first coming down here, of course, my pa Fat and Daddy and all of them, it was a thing, you sit under the trees. There wasn't nothing else to do, you sit under the trees, you should watch the traffic go by. And I guess he stopped to make sure he was heading in the right direction. And of course, he got a big conversation going, because he was really down to earth. He was from Eastern Kentucky, and he had a lot of tragedy. His twin brother, I think, was shot and killed in front of him, and just a lot of things that, you know, he didn't care to tell you about. And of course, he liked car races, and Daddy liked car races, and up until they both were too sickly to do it, they still went to the car races together. But I thought he was a real good preacher. Now, he was one that I think believed, like you said, that the Lord would tell him what to say, because I don't ever remember him having notes. But now he could really quote scripture, and he had a lot of vision problems, I know. So a lot of times I'm not sure he could actually read well. That he was maybe going off what he had.
Yeah,
in his
sugar
mind.
diabetes.
Yeah, he was bad diabetic, and there was even occasions when he had to stop and eat some crackers or something, you know, during the service, because he was having a sugar drop. But he was very personable, never seen a stranger.
Calvin, Tom Moody.
Who's a good preacher. He was, I would say, close to Jennifer's family, probably than anybody in church, because he told that he and Charlie went to a lot of car races, and he spent a lot of time in Charlie's house. So he was likable. I remember we used to have a business meeting on Wednesday night. We'd have a meal, and Mama would always, a lot of times, would cook a lemon pie and bring it. And he was real bad diabetic. He took insulin all the time. And he was over there digging in Mama's pie, getting a piece of that pie, and I went by and elbowed him. I said, reckon what your doctor would say about you if he's seen that? He said, well, I'm gonna take care of it. He said, I'm gonna go to the house and get a little extra insulin. So he about what he wanted to, but he was a good minister. He kind of like Jennifer said, I don't remember seeing him have, notes, but he just preached like, what God laid on his heart. He worked a lot, different places for his family, I guess, when he wasn't preaching.
He was an electrician.
Yeah.
He actually installed the wiring for the first KFC restaurant.
Oh.
Yeah, he knew Colonel Sanders.
And he worked in the either the Empire State Building or the Twin Towers. I don't know which. One of the two.
He'd been all over, I think.
He would go to work for a week and fly back home. I don't know where he was, but I remember Paul telling me those stories. He'd go for a week.
Well, I guess with you, I can't assume. Was he loud, or was he more of a teaching?
Fairly, yeah.
He could be.
I'll remember when a lot of times he would talk about things happening in his life, and evidently he spent a lot of time. And did anybody ever remember the place that he was always talking about? He spent a lot of time Valparaiso, Indiana, I believe it was.
I think so.
Yeah, he spent a lot of time there. He ought to talk a lot about that. He done a lot of work in the church here, didn't he? Yeah.
Did his daughter live in Indiana?
His older daughter,
His older
yes.
daughter.
I think so.
There was a group of yous that were ordained when he was pastor. So that group that was ordained, I know you and Michael were ordained. So Jimmy White would have been in that group.
My brother was ordained.
James Earl.
Yeah.
Okay,
All four of us was at
That
the
was-
same time.
that was a lot of yous.
Yeah.
All right. Glenn, anything you might remember about Tom Moody?
As far as hearing Brother Moody speak, I don't think I ever heard him, but he was a really good friend with my wife. My wife was secretary of post oak, and he was a good friend with Brother Joe, and he would come in there and talk to her, and, you know, but they was big buddies, him and my wife was. So, as far as hearing him preach, I don't think I ever heard him preach a sermon, because I was at post oak then.
Okay. Miss Nancy, Tom Moody.
I liked him, he preached good, but as far as spending any time with him, I never did except at church.
Now, Jeff, this one will be the first one you're really,
Oh, yeah.
really able to contribute.
Yeah,
Well,
because I always felt like a adopted son to a certain degree, because me and his younger son, Paul, was about 2 or 3 years different. So I was the older of the two, but I mean, I hung out at his house all the time. Me and Paul would get into odd and end things. We wasn't the best. Actually, I was the better one. I always try to talk him out. He's the preacher's son, so. But yeah, he was a good teacher and a good leader. And I remember that the biggest thing back in those days, I remember it was M night, which is you're talking about this coming up this Monday. That we'd all get together. We'd try to beat, I think it was Post Oak that won every year. We couldn't figure out how they won, but we was trying. We came in second every year. They think they was recruiting people out of state, we thought, but we couldn't prove it. But yeah, I remember those, and it was a good fellowship on them nights too, those.
now, what was M night?
That same thing you're talking about that's coming up this Monday at the
The meeting?
association.
What was the competition?
Who can have the most members show up at the church?
You get a banner.
Yeah.
As a percentage
Yeah.
of your training union attendance,
Huh.
who had the biggest percentage. Like if you had enrolled 50 at training union, you know, or how close you got to that 50, your percentage. So it wasn't a total number, but it was a percentage.
We wouldn't have no show at all.
No, they didn't have trouble at all. They recruited everybody.
Yeah. Well, he's talking about now. You know, if we have 6, we have 3 show up. That's 50% right there. We'd bring everybody.
Yeah, that was a big competition back then.
Well, probably that's how Post Oak won, but
Yeah. I mean, we thought we had it this year. We thought we'd have it this year. Nope, we didn't get it. It's always came in.
Well, I used to teach training union, and at one time I had 41. And that
This was at Post Oak,
And
and you wrote down 85.
no, well,
That's how Antioch kept attendance for a few years. I don't know if you're aware of that, but you go. I look at some of our ACPs from previous years, and I'm like, man, those are high numbers.
no, that was.
Also, another thing we did a lot was, like I said, the nursing home. We'd go up there a lot on the on Saturday nights and minister up there. We did a lot of ministries, I think. And we did visitations also during his time too, to see why members wouldn't come and try to encourage them to get back.
He tried to get everybody involved in something.
Yeah, he was on hands on.
Miss Joyce, what sticks out to you about Tom Moody?
He was a good friend, and his wife was too, and I liked him. He was a good preacher, and Jeff and Paul would be going to different places, and I'd have to go up there and get Jeff. Sometimes at Brother Moody's house, and sometimes Paul would come over, so. And they still get together now.
I also want to mention, he actually, when he was a youth, when he was growing up, he used to collect rattlesnakes for the churches that handled rattlesnakes in East Kentucky. And he was always telling those stories how he handled rattlesnakes to get and the church would pay him to get the snakes, snake handling churches.
He was cool.
Colorful.
Mm-hmm.
Way to put that. Michael?
Yeah, I really enjoyed him. He brought a lot of maybe color to the pulpit, I guess you'd call it. He made it real interesting, but he always had something to talk about, just like they was talking about. He worked on skyscrapers in New York, all the way from that to, like he was talking about catching the snakes in eastern Kentucky for other churches. And he was talking about when he was in the pulpit once, somebody shot and the bullet come real close to him.
That's when he was real young, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, he always had a lot to tell, and he kept everybody interested as well as with the word. But that's what I remember by him. And he baptized my daughters. I mean, I remember that. That was special to him. I remember him telling me that.
And he baptized me also in the creek.
Alrighty. Well, let me ask this. He's really well loved. It sounds like everybody has really high opinions of Tom Moody. I have heard that him leaving was a bit rocky. Seemed like what I've been told is that he seemed to have gotten old, and there were some people who thought that he was a bit old, and he didn't feel that way, and he was maybe pushed a little bit towards to consider resigning and did not want to. And so when he finally did leave, the church set this rule that they were going to vote every 3 years. Is that accurate? Have I been told right there?
There was something to it. I don't know the full details.
Probably would.
I think he wanted to stay here where he could get to retire. And they both, him and Shirley both, is buried up here in the cemetery. So I think he wanted to stay here till he could retire, and he wanted to be buried in the cemetery. I think that. A lot of people thought he stayed too long, but he's just trying to hang on, so.
I was always worried about his driving because of his vision. I mean, he drove when.
He was driving when I got here.
Yeah, and I don't think, according to what he said, every time he'd get back from a doctor, he'd talk about him saying, well, they said I'm legally blind, but I can still see good enough. I was like, that kind of scared me.
But she had 2 or 3 wrecks. She had one out in the field in front of us coming home because she worked at Greenville at the hospital. And she fell asleep, and there she went in Jason's field.
That was actually mentioned at his funeral. The one preaching his funeral said Shirley would get upset with him all the time because she'd be coming in frustrated in church, and the pastor would say, "What's wrong?" He'd go, "Look at that car. He's got another scratch on it."
Didn't he start taking her to Greenville most of the time when after that or later on?
I'm not sure when he started doing that, but I mean, it was sort of like the blind leading the blind.
Yeah.
Well, that's towards the end.
Yeah.
Because they both was.
But you know what? They ate what they wanted up to the last days.
They did.
Paul's brother and sister was fussing at him for bringing him, I don't know, some kind of sweets or something. And he looked at Paul, looked at him and said, "He's 89 years old. He's gonna eat what he wants to."
Of course, we're getting out of the way. I know I am. But Daddy, you think like Daddy think that he couldn't do nothing. You know, he getting more. He couldn't remember where he'd been, and we just took his keys away from him because we figured he'd get out somewhere, and he couldn't drive. you know, we had to take him to get groceries and, take him pay his bills or doctor
Was that your daddy?
or, huh?
Your daddy?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, he just, we sure just let him drive. You know, he didn't know part of the time where he was at and,
Well, at least you're self-aware of it, Calvin, because I met you in a hospital bed. Because I had just started as pastor here, and I had to go to
you
Nashville.
and, JB.
Me and
come
JB
see me
come-
in Nashville,
Yeah.
I had back surgery.
Yeah, first time I met you, you wasn't awake.
Yeah.
Me and Carolyn went in to pray for you,
Yeah,
but you were in the hospital because at 75 you had lifted a lawnmower
yeah,
on your own.
yeah. That's real smart.
That was, yeah,
You're thinking that, I
so, yeah.
Oh, well, I was stout, and you know how it is, you get to the point I could think I could walk up, pick up anything and walk off with it, which I did, till then. But that didn't hit me till about a week or two later, when it hits me.
We can't do what we used to a long time ago. I can't even.
It was a 52-inch, lawnmower. I just thought I could pick it up and push it up on the trailer. I found out 2 weeks later it didn't work.
A riding mower. See Calvin picking up a riding mower. Oh Lordy. All right, we're going long. I'm gonna try to finish here, but all right, Scott Hughes. He didn't have quite as long as a tenure, but Miss Jennifer, what do you remember about Scott Hughes?
Well, I think at that particular time, he was one of the younger pastors we ever had, and he was not married, which was a thing where they were undecided, what do we want him since he's not married, or, you know. And of course, Brother Moody, bless his soul, he liked to try to fix up people, so he was quick to fix him up with Vicky Ballard that used to live down here on the road, and then after they got married, that's when he left. But I mean, he was a very good preacher. For his, you know,
You could say it.
his age.
Yeah. Yeah, for his age, he was probably 30, and yeah, for him being so young. I had a woman recently tell me Whippoorwill voted in a new pastor here recently, and I said, "How are you liking him?" And she said, "He's very, very young." And I said, "Oh," and she said, "He's just so young." And I said, "Well, sometimes young pastors can be all right too." And she said, "You know how young he is? He's 29. I said, "Well, just give him a chance." I didn't have the heart to tell her, "Ma'am, I am 28. But any case, all right. Michael, you were going to say something. I interrupted you.
No.
Okay. Scott Hughes, Calvin. What do you remember about Scott Hughes?
Scott Hughes was kind of a short, heavy-set guy. He was a loud preacher. He best I remember, I think he did, took a handkerchief one time and sweat off his forehead. He was a good singer. He sung a lot of solos by himself. Likeable, had a good family, had a real sweet wife, 2 daughters. He was a real likable person. The church, I thought, done real good in his ministry, kind of growing, picking up. That's about what I remember. He was a jolly person. I've seen him several times since then. He was always seeming like he was happy and tickled to death to see. Real likable.
Didn't they adopt some children?
Yes,
Yeah.
they did.
They
They got several
yeah.
children adopted.
I thought the last time I saw them, they had some
And
Yeah,
they're,
they had them up
from
here.
different countries.
They're-
even.
When we
about-
had our Sunday, we had unblinded preaching.
Yeah.
they're about in their, graduating high school, most of them now.
And he wore really thick glasses. Something
Yeah.
was wrong with his eyes. Sort of had an eye tick a little bit,
Huh.
but it didn't stop him.
Oh, wait a minute. I was thinking of Brian Jones.
Okay.
Brian Jones is not on here.
No,
No, he must have either come after.
it's after two.
It was after Jimmy.
I was thinking of Brian Jones when I was talking about who this was. Scott Hughes, yeah, they married, Vicky Ballard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of Brother Brian Jones. I don't remember, was he in between, he was before Tom Moody. Was he between Ray Mullins and Tom Moody?
No.
No, he was between Brother Moody and Brother Jimmy.
I thought it was after Brother Jimmy.
Brian Jones was. Yeah, this Scott Hughes here was right before Jimmy.
Yeah, no, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yes, Scott and Vicky adopted some kids, didn't y'all stop that? Yeah, I remember that. He was a good preacher, young. Wasn't hard to hear, I could hear him.
Glenn, did you know him at all? Scott Hughes?
No, I was,
Yeah, you were opposed to it.
I was supposed to have been.
Okay. Miss Nancy, think about Scott Hughes.
Yeah, I remember him. I'll never forget him. I didn't like him. Honestly, I didn't. Well, I don't know how to say it. I don't want to be ugly. But he was one that run down the aisle,
Okay.
and I didn't care for that. And one day I was so mad, I just stuck my arm out and done that when he run down the aisle. He turned around, went back up to the altar and dismissed us. But he was two-faced, I'll just put it like that. If there was certain things in the church that he didn't like, then he took it out on the family. He did my family.
Oh.
And it was my two little granddaughters that he done that dirty.
Oh.
And I called him on the road about it. Oh, he didn't know that.
Now is this Allison and Ashley,
Yes.
you mean? Okay.
Oh, and I asked him why. Well, he told Sheila not to put their name on the bulletin because they were graduating with the other kids. And so I asked him why. And he said, because they didn't send me an invitation. And so I said, well then if you'd have paid for their invitations, they would have sent you one. Because they didn't have money to send invitations, and they didn't ask me for any money, they'd have had the money. But they wouldn't ask anybody for money. And that was the reason, and that's the way he did them, because he didn't get an invitation. I thought that was pretty sorry. And I also told him that we did not leave little kids off of our bulletin. We did not hurt their feelings, to make them feel bad. And so he didn't like me either, and I didn't like him. Didn't like his wife. I'm not gonna lie. And after every sermon, and he'd say, anybody got anything to say? And she'd be over, heavens know what she said. And I don't know if she's praying for somebody or asking for somebody to pray. And one Sunday morning, it irritated me, and a certain woman in this church that I walked over and I said, I get so darn sick and tired of listening to her every Sunday morning. She didn't do it anymore. Well, you had to know who to tell something if you wanted it passed over the church. And so he left right after that. I was sure glad to see him. He's the only one I ever was ugly with.
Well, I hate that you didn't tell us what you really thought.
Well, maybe next time.
Jeff.
I don't recall remembering hearing any of his sermons because at that time I worked on weekends and I was in Glasgow. But I did go to school with him. He was a graduate of Logan County High, and I had no problems knowing him. He was 2 grades below me, so he was a good person that I know of. But I don't know about preaching wise.
Okay, he was 2 grades below you.
Yeah, I graduated in '89, and I think he graduated with Paul Moody, I want to say.
So he would have been born, what, 73 or 4?
Yeah, 73.
And so he was 21.
Yeah.
So he was younger than me when he came here. Because I was 23 when I started. So yeah, he was a kid.
He was.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at Antioch. How progressive. All right. Miss Joyce.
Well, I liked him, and he was a good preacher, I thought, and I knew his wife for several years when she was real little. I'd go up Charlie's where they lived, in the house next to the end of the road on the left.
Okay.
And anyway, I remember Shirley and I made candy for the kids around Christmas time, and then when we went singing on holidays like Christmas, we'd go and sing to people's houses.
I remember that too.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it.
Michael, anything about Scott Hughes stick out to you?
Not really, nothing that I can think of right off. I mean, he was young and learning, I thought.
I hear that a lot about me. So maybe one of these days Nancy will tell you what she thinks about me.
Well, Scott, he was really a good one. I really liked him. Was we talking about Brian while ago?
We were talking about Scott Hughes just now.
But we was talking about Brian, wasn't we?
Okay, were you talking about Brian?
Yeah. that's-
Okay, that's important. That helps.
That needs to be changed.
Yeah, put that on the record, because we're talking about Scott Hughes.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Brother Brian.
Brian Jones. Okay, yeah.
He's not on here.
So, no, he came after Jimmy
He
did.
came after Brother Jimmy.
Yeah, so.
So tell us about Scott Hughes. Clear his name for the record.
Tell us something you liked about Scott Hughes.
I really like Scott. He was a good old boy. He was a good preacher.
Well, didn't one of them kind of stutter? Was that Scott Hughes that kind of stuttered?
I think
I
he had
think
a
it
little
was,
stutter.
uh-huh.
I think he had
Yeah,
a
I
little
like Scott. He was a good old boy.
Yeah,
A lot of people-
I remember that.
Brian Jones rubbed the wrong way, I think.
Yes, Brian Jones. I don't know who that was, but it sounds
You
like
better
he had a
turn
problem.
that, you better turn that thing off over there. We ain't got
I'm
that.
debating on whether I need to edit that or not. It's nothing to do with anything.
Oh, man.
Oh, Lordy.
I must have
Okay.
been thinking about him.
I don't think he's thinking about you, Nancy.
I don't care whether he does or not.
She just wanted to say it. I just have something.
I
You
think
had
you feel
something.
better. You got
You
off
know
your
what?
chest.
It was all them times he said, "Does anybody have anything on their heart?" And you sat there quiet all them years, and you just needed to say it now. It was on your heart.
Oh, I said it before those people. Don't believe I haven't. Oh, man.
Alrighty.
See him.
Jimmy Kenner.
So everyone likes Scott Hughes.
Everybody in this room likes Scott Hughes. I like him. I was born during his tenure, and I loved him.
Yeah, he was really a good preacher.
Miss Jennifer, Jimmy Kenner.
Well, I think Jimmy Kenner, everybody loved him. They still do.
Yeah.
At the time that he came, I had just gone to work at Walmart, so I had worked Sundays most of the time, so I didn't get to come a lot. So when I did get to come, I really enjoyed him. He called himself the dancing bear because he couldn't stay behind the pulpit. He was over here and he was over there. He was out front. But, you know, he was just so full of the Spirit that I don't think the man could stand still. You have to tie him. But he very rarely, I mean, he might read from his Bible or quote something from his Bible, but the Bible was up there and he was everywhere else. But, you know, he got his message across. And sometimes he was an emotional preacher. And of course, I'm an emotional person. And he might get choked up, and then I'd be bawling. And, you know, he did a lot for the church, I think, as far as the youth goes. I think he started the Teen Kid program,
I think he
and
did.
of course he had 2 teenage boys, and of course all their friends, and so at one time I think we had like 100 kids or something just in the Wednesday night program. And I know he took kids to like Holiday World, because sometimes I'd chaperone, and I mean, he was just so personable that he could get down on anybody's level. And I think that's why he's done so well in Oklahoma, because, you know, he's a white man from Kentucky, but he's living with the natives, you know, just like they are.
He goes to the powwows, don't he?
Oh, yeah, I've worked a powwow. Oh, there's no better fun than that. But, I mean, it's just, he had an ability to get you excited and to show you that you were doing something good for the Lord.
Calvin, Jimmy Kenner.
Emotional, involved, tender-hearted, humble, down to earth.
community-wise, everybody loved him. He would help anybody in any way. Good preacher. He had I remember this about him real well. He had a class of his own, young married class. And this was young couples in the church. And he taught the Sunday school class, plus preached. And a lot of our daughters, Michael's daughter, my daughters, were all involved in that. And I'm not mistaken, it was anywhere from 12 to 20 couples that went into that class. Activities in the youth, he was good at that. He was humble anyway, really. He was just a down-to-earth, plain, good-hearted preacher. He just lovable. You couldn't help but love him, appreciate him. And the church, I guess, was probably high in numbers when he was here. A lot of people came. He had a good family, he had good parents. They were Church of Christ, but good Christian people, I believe. His wife was a 900-mile-an-hour talker, and but she's lovable. She could play the piano. She could do about anything. They worked good together as a couple in the church. They did. They had a good relationship. The boys, Christopher and Mike, it's difference in daylight and dark.
Kyle?
It's difference in daylight now than it was daylight and dark.
Yeah.
They were totally different. Jimmy was likable, and his brother, he seemed like hard to get to know. I never was around him a whole lot, but Jimmy was tender-hearted. I've seen Jimmy so many times just break down and cry about somebody, you know, he witnessed to and accepted Jesus, and he was really tender-hearted. He was. Good family.
Glenn, did you know him any? Jimmy Kenner? Okay. Miss Nancy, what great things do you have to say about Jimmy Kenner?
Well, I'm like Calvin, that's the way I feel about him. He was a great preacher, and everybody loved him, and do anything for you, and if you had a problem, you always went to him, and always doing something. We were always busy. We was just doing something, one church or another. So we still miss him.
Yeah. Jeff, were you here for any of the Kenner years?
I was still working on weekends, but what I heard was basically he got the church going and more into the missionary and got the youth involved. Because without the youth, we will not grow. We will decline. And that is the key.
Miss Joyce?
He was really good about coming to see Milton when he had surgeries or when he was in the hospital. He came to see Milton when he was at home, and our road at that time where we lived was a really rocky road. And so he would, every time Milton would get sick to have surgery, he would be right there to go see Milton. And sometimes Penny came, and she was real sweet too. And I loved both of them, and I enjoyed his preaching.
Michael?
Yeah, I mean, he was just so involved, it seemed like to me, you know, with the whole church. I know he'd come up with different things he wanted to try, and he talked about it a little bit, you know, and he said, well, the Lord will work it out, and we'll just go with it. And we had, that's when we had plays upstairs for Easter, and there's just people come out of the woodwork to come and help with that from other churches, some of them from this church. And, you know, it was just, it seemed like more he was just involved with stuff that he felt like that's what, you know, the church ought to do. And he would say, you know, I've heard him say a lot of times, you know, so we'll go that direction. He said, I don't know what the Lord's wanting us to do, but, you know, we'll do it. And it, all of it I could ever think of, you know, turned out good. I mean, A lot of people involved, and our attendance, was up some, but it wasn't up as much as I expected it to be, really, while he was here. Because, there was a lot of people interested, and they'd come some, maybe, and then they didn't, but, it was up, but not like I thought it would be while he was here, before he left.
I know that it must have been toward the end of his time here, 2002 or 3-ish, there was this whole deal about building another church.
Yeah.
They even got blueprints and purchased the property over here where the I Am Center is.
Right.
And I want to think the vote went through to actually build the church. So what happened there?
When we was checking on the funding, the banks didn't want to loan us the money unless we had, I forgot what it was, it's outrageous, like 70 or 80% of the money already. And we told them, so if we had the money, we'd be building already, and then he told me, said, when they was actually clearing the land over here, when he come over the hill up there coming down here, he said, he's seen them clearing the spot, and he said, I don't know why you having me leave, Lord, but, I feel like that's what I'm supposed to do. And,
I remember when my daddy had open heart surgery in Nashville. Brother Jimmy came down there, and it was really cold that morning, and he had a flat tire, and I don't know how he got it changed himself or had to call somebody. I don't remember that, but he was there all the time Daddy was in surgery.
Well, I know that was the first one I'd met, was Jimmy. My first 2-3 months here, Antioch was in a bit of a financial strain. Low attendance, not a lot of money to go around, and we were still supporting a lot of missions. And so I went out to Oklahoma to visit the ministry out there, and Jimmy was way more transparent than I ever dreamed he would be. He told me about every dollar they had coming in, and he said, Michael, I've never asked Antioch to send me money. They have always just done it. If they're not in a good spot to send anymore, they can stop. I've never needed them to. And he was just so transparent, and like I've had the same experience all y'all have described. He seems so wholehearted and warm. Seems like you can barely have a conversation about the Lord without him tearing up. He really believes it. And I talked to Albert when I first came. Of course, Albert was the pastor before me. And a couple of months in, I went up to talk to Albert because I was really confiding in him. I needed his help a lot, and he's been there for me. And I told Albert, I said, I feel like some of the church is still waiting for Jimmy to come back. And he said, you think so? And so Albert felt the same way. He knew that there were several people in the church still very much waiting for Jimmy to come back. And I think that to a large degree, there were several people in our church that died waiting for Jimmy to come back. And several have told me if he was going to come back, he would have come back when his grandsons were born. And I believe that too. I think he's wholly committed to his ministry in Oklahoma now. And so I think there's no harsh feelings about that either. That's a weird one too, is you were in this position to build a new church and the church doing well, and then for him to leave and there's no harsh feelings at all. That's very unique. I've not had a single person tell me they were upset with him about leaving. So, left a very good reputation here.
Well, every other pastor that we've ever had has been very hospitable when he came to visit about, including him, maybe have him say a prayer or something like that. Brian Jones did not like him at all. I think he was, maybe not jealous, but, he felt threatened.
Yeah.
He thought, well, he's coming back, he's gonna take my place or something, boot me out.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that was very nice.
No. Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, honestly, 2020, if Jimmy Kenner had decided to move back, I absolutely believe Antioch would have voted me out in a heartbeat and voted him in. But you can't you can't do anything about that. Yeah, he's not gonna be back, and you just do what you can. You can't hate him for it.
He has a heart for those people.
Yeah, and a heart for the people here too.
I'm saying with Brother Joe, he was there for 40 years.
Yeah,
I mean, and you know, it's something unique about him. Unless there was a revival or something going on, he wouldn't let another preacher in his pulpit.
mm. Joe Carcombe. Yeah,
Unless there was a revival or something going on, he didn't, I mean, he was very protective of that.
yeah, should be. All right, guys, I've kept you way long. Thank you for staying and getting through this. Appreciate you. I'm sure future generations will appreciate you, and we will not let Brian Jones hear this. All right.
And Scott Hughes is a good preacher.